Today, we are going to be diving into the fiction thriller movie Teen Wolf. So hold on to your seats and watch out for spoilers. The movie begins with Liam, a werewolf, working with Hikari, a shape-shifting fox with magical powers called a kitsune, at a Japanese restaurant that serves as a prison for the evil trickster spirit known as the Nogitsune. Soon, a person in a hood walks into the restaurant. This person is searching for a jar that holds the trapped Nogitsune. He pulls out a gun and starts attacking. Hikari tries to escape with the jar, but the hooded person catches up to her. He sets the Nogitsune free and, in return, demands revenge against a man and his friends. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Scott, an alpha werewolf, works with his friend Deaton at an animal shelter and pet clinic. At night, as Scott and Deaton are closing their animal shelter, Scott suddenly sees his dead girlfriend Allison at the door. She asks for help and then disappears as the shelter animals start barking. Scott turns back and suddenly runs into Chris, Allison's dad. Chris says that he's been seeing and hearing Allison for the past 2 weeks as if she's alive. Chris believes that Allison is stuck between life and death. He proposes a plan to go back to Beacon Hills, California, and perform a ritual to bring her soul peace. Scott agrees with this idea. Next, we cut to Lydia, who is Scott's friend, and also a banshee, with the power to make a deadly wail. Lydia begins to hallucinate at her workplace, and, while in a trance, draws something mysterious. Later, Scott arrives in Beacon Hills and reunites with Lydia at the spot where Allison was killed by the Nogitsune's Oni. They collect the soil from Allison's spot of death and later gather at Scott's former house with Chris. Lydia shows them her cryptic drawings and says she needs help because she's not using her banshee powers like before. Lydia is also accompanied by Jackson, who is a shape-shifting Kanama with poisonous claws and a lethal tail. Jackson deciphers Lydia's drawings, and they realize they need to perform the ritual at the sacred Nemeton tree. Meanwhile, at Beacon Hills, Eli, son of the werewolf Derek, keeps stealing Styles' Jeep for enjoyment. Or maybe he's auditioning for Grand Theft Auto, Beacon Hills edition. Elsewhere, Derek, a consulting police officer, is investigating an arson scene. On the other hand, another officer repeatedly receives reports about Eli stealing the Jeep, forcing Derek to intervene and stop his son. When they get home, Derek and Eli have an argument that leads to discussing Eli's inability to transform into a werewolf. Eli suggests he might not even be a werewolf and walks away. Later, Derek tries to make things right by asking about the lacrosse game that night, but he finds out that Eli has snuck out. In the next scene, an officer named Parrish brings back Styles' Jeep to an auto shop owned by the were-coyote, Malia. They have sex as Malia jumps onto him, and their moment is later interrupted by a message from Lydia. Malia leaves to see Lydia. While Chris prepares for the ritual, Deaton arrives in Beacon Hills with a Japanese-engraved bullet belonging to Chris. Deaton finds it suspicious and poses riddles to Chris. As Chris answers, the Nogitsune that once possessed him re-emerges. Deaton throws Mountain Ash to free Chris, who had been under its influence. Meanwhile, Malia reunites with Scott and Lydia to help them in finding the Nemeton. As they move through the forest, they catch Eli following them, but he offers to lead them to the Nemeton's location. As night approaches, they find the Nemeton, send Eli away, and start the ritual using the soil they collected earlier and the sword that killed Allison. The Nemeton consumes the soil and the sword in a brief storm, but nothing happens. As they are about to leave, Allison magically appears unconscious on the Nemeton. They're surprised and quickly take her to the hospital. After they leave, the Nogitsune enters the Nemeton, transforming into a humanoid shape. It wields the sword that had been absorbed by the tree earlier. At the hospital, Scott's mom, Melissa, a doctor, stabilizes Allison. When she wakes up, Allison is confused and remembers being a werewolf hunter. She wants to kill Derek. Scott tries to stop her, but she escapes. She briefly sees her father, Chris, but runs away from him. On the other hand, most officers are called to another arson scene. Seems like setting fires is the new hobby in the town. Only one officer remains at the station who happens to be a kitsune, but is unaware of it. He encounters the Nogitsune, who steals all 9 of his tails and summons 9 Onis. At the hospital, the pack worries about Derek and decides to warn him. Meanwhile, Allison goes home and gets weapons. The Nogitsune appears as her dead mum and tricks her into thinking that Scott is a killer. It plans to use the Oni to defeat Scott's friends, while Allison focuses on killing Scott. Next, Lydia and Jackson head to the station and discover the dead Kitsune officer. While at the high school locker room, Derek, who came to cheer his son at the game, has to help Eli with a twisted ankle during the game. But suddenly, they are attacked by Allison. Derek fights her, shocked to see her alive. She shoots an arrow at Derek's throat and escapes as Liam, Hikari, Malia, and Scott arrive just in time to save him. At a new arson scene, the officers realize that the fires are not random, but have a purpose. They're soon ambushed by Oni, as 2 officers are stabbed. Luckily, Parrish, who is a hellhound that can set himself on fire, saves the sheriff. Erstwhile, Derek tells Scott to assist Eli, who can't use his powers to heal. Malia confirms Eli is an actual werewolf, but he's too scared to transform. Upon Derek's return home, they discover Peter, Malia's werewolf father, waiting for them. Peter then uses a blowtorch to speed up Derek's healing by cauterizing his wound. Next, Scott decides to go after Eli, but his mother advises him to save Allison too. Meanwhile, the sheriff instructs Parrish to head to the station while he goes to the auto shop to alert the others. Back at the auto shop, Eli is hunted by Allison. As Eli tries to fight her, Scott arrives just in time to rescue him and uses his special alpha roar to help Eli heal his ankle. As they escape into the woods, Scott tells Eli to go back to his dad, and while he tries to talk to Allison, Eli runs off and finds the sheriff on the road. While at Malia's, Peter tries to stop Chris from going after Scott, worried that he might help Allison harm Eli. But Chris says he knows that the real Allison is gone, and they decide to team up to find and eliminate the illusion of Allison. Melissa joins as they follow Allison and Scott's trail from Hale Auto Shop. Meanwhile, Liam and Hikari go to the station looking for the sheriff, but find Lydia and Jackson instead. They tell Lydia that the hooded man is causing the fires and decide to find him together. Back at Malia's place, Derek and Eli reunite briefly before they're attacked by the Oni. Dayton, Derek, the sheriff, and Eli are stabbed and they disappear. The Oni then target Malia, but she uses sunlight to make them vanish. The rest of the Oni go after Liam and Hikari, who also get stabbed and disappear after expressing their love for each other. Elsewhere at the station, Lydia and Jackson try to figure out the hooded man's plan. Malia and Parrish join them and inform them about the Oni. Then they all go to one of the burn sites. Malia and Parrish head out to get silver weapons that can kill Oni. While Lydia and Jackson investigate the arson site and realize that burnt rowan trees turn into mountain ash, suggesting the person behind this knows chemistry and uses a special fuel. In the woods, Scott allows Allison to stab him with a dagger coated in deadly wolfsbane poison. He wants to talk since he's now poisoned. Scott helps Allison recall her new motto about protecting the vulnerable, but she knocks him out. Then, she brings him to a storage room, but starts doubting her actions. But the Nogitsune uses her mother Kate's death, caused by Peter, to manipulate her thoughts. Scott soon wakes up and worries about Hikari, whom Allison shot. Allison explains that wolfsbane doesn't hurt Hikari because she's a kitsune, but the Oni can. Scott tells her the Oni were the ones that killed Allison before, but she doesn't trust him. He suggests a deal. If she believes him, she has to promise to save him. Eventually, we're taken to where Eli, Derek, and the others who were stabbed are trapped in the Nogitsune's illusion. Hikari says their pain makes the Nogitsune stronger, so they're not going to be killed yet. Liam hears cheering and figures out they're near the lacrosse game. Meanwhile, Peter, Chris, and Melissa also arrive at the lacrosse stadium, wondering what the Nogitsune is planning. On the other hand, Lydia contacts Parrish and informs him about the fires, finding it similar to the one that killed Derek's family, caused by Harris, who was a chemistry teacher at Beacon Hills. Lydia says that the only person aware of the formula is supposedly dead, hinting that Harris might be responsible for the fires. Meanwhile, Harris encircles the stadium with mountain ash. Back at the storehouse, Scott shows Allison a picture of them at the ice rink. He talks about their moments at a school dance where they kissed and he said he loved her. She remembers the events, but doesn't remember Scott. Scott goes on to talk about their breakup, and she remembers the last words he said to her. This makes Allison emotional, and she decides to help Scott. She uses a flare to burn and heal his wound, and remembers a past adventure with Scott holding a flare. As Scott gets better, he realizes they're in the lacrosse stadium. Elsewhere in the illusion, the Nogitsune is mad that Scott got better and decides to change things. He throws Eli in the middle of the lacrosse game. Meanwhile, Scott follows Allison as she looks for her dad outside. He tells her to be careful. She's surprised that he still cares and loves her even though she almost killed him. Soon, Scott spots Eli, but they can't leave the stadium because of the mountain ash barrier laid by Harris. They ask the coach to get the audience out for safety, but the coach says they must win the game for everyone to leave. So, Scott and Eli decide to play in the match. In the meantime, Lydia and Jackson are on the outskirts of the stadium when they see Harris, who then shoots Jackson. Lydia tries to stop him, but Harris says he wants revenge because Lydia and the pack sacrificed his life before. He takes Lydia to the field entrance and shows her it's a way into the illusion. Speaking of the illusion, Derek and the sheriff discuss Eli's inability to transform. This is because of a childhood trauma when Derek had transformed in front of Eli to rescue him from a coyote. On the other hand, Allison watches the game and thinks Scott is cute as he messes up, while Eli scores a goal and they win the game. Outside, Harris threatens to shoot Jackson and forces Lydia to share her pain to make the Nogitsune stronger. She shares that she left her relationship with Jackson because of a recurring dream in which she is with Jackson and sees him dying in a car crash. She believes that if she's not with him, the crash would never happen. This dream is why she stopped using her wailing powers. In the next scene, Chris finds Allison as she is attacked by Peter, but Chris uses her dagger to poison Peter, admitting he knew she was his daughter. As Chris and Allison hug, Melissa heals Peter. But soon, the illusion takes Allison, Eli, and Scott. Meanwhile, Malia and Parrish reach the stadium. Malia tells Parrish to use his Hellhound fire to break the barrier. Allison and Scott fight the Oni, buying time for Parrish to enter the illusion with silver weapons. But they're soon outnumbered, and Allison is almost beaten. Lydia's whale saves her just in time, as the whale pushes the Oni out of the illusion and brings back all of Allison's memories. However, the Nogitsune holds Eli by the throat, and the Oni threaten Melissa, Peter, and Chris. Scott gives up and tells Allison to kill him and asks Nogitsune to spare his friends. Allison unwillingly shoots him in the heart. As he falls, the Oni back off from Peter, Melissa, and Chris, and the Nogitsune starts mocking Scott. In an unexpected twist, it turns out that Scott was protected by Hikari's foxfire, allowing him to heal. Allison shoots the Nogitsune in the head and Parrish shatters the barrier. Peter, Melissa, Chris, the sheriff, and Malia join in, using Silver to defeat the Oni. It's like a supernatural Avengers Assemble moment. Meanwhile, Jackson and Lydia disarm Harris when he's confused. Derek and Eli free the others, but the Nogitsune reminds them that he was once bitten by Scott and transforms into a werewolf. The Nogitsune creates an illusion that separates Scott, Eli, and Derek, but they manage to free themselves by communicating with werewolf signals. In the final showdown, Eli is tossed aside, and Parrish uses fire to burn the Nogitsune. Derek tells Scott to watch over Eli as part of his pack, and he throws him aside as he holds the Nogitsune down, while Parrish's fire burns both of them. Derek becomes a true alpha before he dies. Finally, everyone returns to the real world, and they embrace each other, while Scott and Allison kiss. At the funeral, Scott remembers Derek, while the sheriff gives Styles' Jeep to Eli, telling him that Derek fixed it. In the next scene, Allison and Scott start running the animal shelter together. Despite Allison's regrets about the lost time, Scott assures her he sees a future with her. They share a smile and kiss. The movie ends as Harris's transport stops on the road. Guards from Icon House Asylum take him away in their van. He begs that he's not dangerous and doesn't belong there, but they ignore him and take him. This movie was quite the supernatural ride. You've got action, mystery, and a dash of romance all mixed up. The characters growing and dealing with challenges also adds a cool layer to the story. Overall, it's a pretty fun adventure. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss more awesome content like this.